Have you ever wanted to create a truly immersive learning experience that adapts to every single one of your learners so that they can upskill more quickly? Well, with the power of AI, you can do exactly that. The project I'm sharing today is a full role-playing scenario that puts veterinary technicians on the job so that they can practice without any real-world consequences. And everything is powered by AI, from the clients that they'll chat with to the vet that's on duty to give them some support, all the way down to the lead vet tech giving them feedback by video.
Hey, Sabrina! Your thoughtful suggestions for music and homemade foraging toys were spot on. Linda appreciated your clear, patient guidance and vet visit encouragement. Amazing work. Keep it up.
All of this happens in an easy to navigate portal that looks similar to something they would interact on a website. For the more technical people out there, all of the AI API requests are sent securely on a server, so this is production ready. And if you are ready to see how you can push the boundaries with AI and really challenge your learning design skills, then stick around. Hello, I'm Sabrina. I'm one of the instructional designers on Devlin's team. It's been a while since I've been in a YouTube video because I've been behind the scenes helping out our boot campers, helping out with the curriculum side of our career school license application, and even doing some curriculum development within the boot camp. But I'm really excited about today's video, so let's get into it. At the beginning of this video, you saw a little sneak peek of the project, and it is for veterinary technicians to help them assist clients with these non-emergency pet issues through a chat platform, which is not typically the way vet techs communicate. It's usually in person. And I wanted to create something that was realistic and personalized. So I wasn't just adding AI just because I thought it'd be cool. I added AI because I wanted to foster deeper learning for these veterinary technicians. I wanted vet techs to get on this learning experience and feel like they are on the job. I wanted them to feel like they were talking to our client, Linda. I wanted them to be invested in her bird Kiwi's health. I wanted it to feel real when they reached out to a vet and asked for support when they're helping this client. And I also wanted to make sure that the feedback they were receiving from the lead vet tech was targeted. Having general feedback it is helpful, right? Getting any feedback is helpful, but when it can be targeted to the way the learner is interacting with the client, that's just going to help the learning experience so much more, and it's going to help those skills stick because it's relevant to the learner. So how I made that happen was with some different AI integration. So I used GPT-4o, which is the model that powers ChatGPT. Throughout this video, I'm just going to refer to it as ChatGPT, just because that's the more commonly known term, but it is GPT-4o. And then the other tool that I used to make that custom feedback video is HeyGen. So HeyGen is an AI video avatar generator. If you're familiar with Synthesia, it's very similar to that. So you just pick your avatar, you put in your script, you can choose the voice and like tone and all of those things, and then you can create a video. In this video, I'll walk you through the project, the challenges I encountered, how I overcame those challenges, and some key takeaways that you can use for your own AI-powered learning experiences. And because this approach is fully secure and scalable, it can be used to create immersive, high-impact learning experiences for any audience of any size. So before we dig into the project you saw, let me give you a little bit of background. So HeyGen, like I said, is an AI video avatar generator, and I had been using it for some other projects, just different learning experiences and things like that, but thought it'd be really great, again, if we can have these personalized, right? Because anytime you can give that like feedback as targeted as possible, it's relevant to the learner, it's going to stick a lot better. And I thought that would be nice. I don't know how to do that though, but I knew it was possible because I saw that HeyGen had their API available. I saw API documentation, and so I knew it was possible. I just didn't know how to do that just yet. So my first tip I'm going to share with you is anytime you're taking on a technical challenge, start simple. So start with a simple project just so that you can really focus on this new technical piece you're integrating. What can happen is if you build out a full, big, elaborate project and then you're trying to integrate this technical piece, you may run into an issue and then you're not sure if it's this new technical piece or like your storyline triggers were out of order and that's why something didn't fire correctly. So I highly recommend starting simple, so that you can really focus on just those new pieces that you're trying to implement. So that's what I did to test the idea of just like, how do I even get HeyGen into Storyline? I started simple, and I created this like little simple project you see here. Someone will enter their name and they choose one of these 3 animals and press submit. So what happens is in Storyline, I have a variable holding their name. I have a variable that changes to the animal when they select it. And then when they press submit, it's going to execute the JavaScript. Those variables, the name and the animal, would be used in the script for these videos. And I used ChatGPT to help me write the code for this because I am brand new to code. And so if you are too, you may be a little intimidated by some of these processes or some of the terms going on, but don't be. Like I said, I had no coding background at all, but with a little problem solving and the help of AI, was able to make it happen, and I'm sure you can do the same. One way that you can get a leg up, though, to get started is check out Devlin's Intro to JavaScript video that he put out last week. That's going to really help you get all of those like basic key terms, learn more about APIs and things like that, and how you can integrate them into Storyline. So definitely check that out. That will be really helpful. And you'll hear me talk a lot about how I leaned on AI throughout this project. Definitely recommend that as well. So yeah, I created this little project here. Simple, collect the name, choose an animal, execute the JavaScript. And as I was asking ChatGPT to help me with the code, I'm very polite to ChatGPT, any AI really, but I asked it to give me this like step-by-step process and really go into detail and explain everything. And anytime I used any AI for coding, I did say, I'm very new to this, so please explain to me very thoroughly. And I recommend doing that also, asking it to be very thorough. That's the nice thing about AI, right? It doesn't get annoyed with all of your follow-up questions. So ask those questions, learn all of those things. So that was the next step, was to ask ChatGPT, help me out. And so I told it what the project was that I built in Storyline so that I had an idea, and it helped me write the code. And I was able to generate a video. It's really small down here, and I'll play it for you here in just a second. But you can see it was doing exactly what I wanted. It pulled a script. It says, "Hi, Sabrina, welcome. Have you ever seen a polar bear in real life?"
Hi, Sabrina, welcome. Have you ever seen a polar bear in real life?
So this was really exciting. I was able to generate a video. I used ChatGPT to help me write some code. And from Storyline, I was able to send a request to HeyGen. I saw the video processing on my HeyGen dashboard. I saw the video, but it didn't go back to Storyline. And I wasn't really sure what the issue was. Like I said, this is new to me. So the problem solving was already kicking in. So what do I need to do? So I kept talking with ChatGPT, and we were kind of going in circles, and it didn't really feel like it was helping anymore. And I remembered in another video that Devlin did, he talked about using Claude for coding instead. And ChatGPT is like my buddy. It's my go-to. I'm like, okay, let me give Claude a try. So I took everything that I had done in ChatGPT, took it over to Claude, and said, here's what I'm trying to do. I can get a video to generate, but I cannot get it back into Storyline. So Claude helped me revise the code. I kept trying it, and I kept getting these blocks and errors, and eventually found out that it was not going to work because HeyGen would not send things back to Storyline because it was not secure. And in order to do that, I was going to need to use a server. I'm new to code. Using a server felt so intimidating. But I knew with the help of AI, I could probably figure it out. But I also knew with the help of Devlin, I could probably figure it out. So once I knew that I needed a server, I reached out to Devlin and said, like, hey, I'm trying to work on this project. This is like the big idea I have with like the vet tech thing. Here's this simple project I've tried. AI says I need a server. So how hard is it to make a server or like use a server? That's how new I was. I didn't even know what I was like trying to ask. And so Devlin tagged in, and he started doing some research on servers and serverless functions. All right, after tagging in Devlin and he was doing his research on servers, I knew it was my job next to go ahead and get the rest of my project up and running. So finalized the content for the vet tech project, and then was ready to start working on my visual mockups. So I'm going to move us over to Figma and kind of show you how Figma fits into my workflow and show you where this project started. So I use Figma to help me plan things out. And in this case, I didn't write out a full storyboard, but I did use Figma to kind of help me create like a visual storyboard. And I'll show you that here in a second. But in Figma, I like to have one page for assets. And this is usually pretty messy. This one doesn't look too bad because I didn't have too many extra images, but it can get kind of messy. And so what I have here are just like, the different visuals that I'm using, my logo that I created, a color palette, and then my images. And actually, when I said everything was AI powered, even these are AI images. I used FreePic's AI suite to create these images. And even like our extra pets over here, our vets are all AI. This background image is also an AI image that I generated on FreePic and then just added a blur for one of the backgrounds. And then our avatars over here are from HeyGen. So I just had them pose in a different way in a video and then took a screenshot and then created their little avatar images. Now, when I'm working on the actual visuals, like I said, I created kind of like a visual storyboard. So here's kind of a wider view. You can see I kind of plan out the flow of things here. And I expected this project to be kind of small because I wanted it to be short enough to be a portfolio piece that people can go through. So I started planning out the flow of things. And what I do is I'll make it the size of my slide, but then I'll add some gray space down here. And I start planning through what I want these slides to be like, or if I get feedback, or if I'm just thinking of ideas, I'll add them down here. And then here, like I was writing out my script that I was going to have for Morgan for her video. This was an original video where she started talking about like her experience and she was going to be the helper, but I changed it up a bit from what we see from Morgan in the beginning. And what's happening in Figma? Okay. You can see the chat looks much different than what you saw at the beginning of the video. So this is where I was starting initially. Kind of the separation here. I think that was like a common approach that I had seen people using when they're implementing ChatGPT, which I get. It helps to separate it here, but I wanted it to feel a bit different. But this is where I was starting from. We have our other colleague, Alex. We do get a review from our client later on. So this is kind of where I was starting, but mostly I'm showing you this to kind of see how I was doing this before even thinking about a storyboard. So I took a little bit of a different approach with the development. I just wanted to jump in because I was very excited about this project. But so I create a slide big enough for my slide size that I'm going to use in Storyline and then give myself some space at the bottom to plan things out. Sometimes my notes are a little bit more detailed. Sometimes they're a little bit vague like they are here, or you'll see full scripts and things like that, or little notes and comments where I'm talking to myself, thinking through ideas. Now, where things have gone since, I continued to iterate, and so you see the project that I showed at the beginning. And even then, my second round was still different. I'll talk more about the feedback I received and how that changed things. But Figma is a big part of my workflow because I do use it for my visuals, and visual mockups are not just about making things look nice. It's really about figuring out that key user experience that's really going to help your learners, a user interface that's really going to help your learners with their experience. You don't want anything to be confusing because even if you have this great, wonderful content, but there's barriers because they can't access it, that doesn't really help. So really taking the time to figure out the user interface for your learners is pretty crucial. And that's what I use Figma for. Even if I don't mock up every slide, what I end up doing is when I'm in Storyline and I start doing something I need another slide for this, then I'll usually go back to Figma, mock up something really quick, and then go back over. And honestly, it makes the development piece pretty quick when I'm moving things into Storyline because Figma already has the X and Y value, the height and width of everything, so I can just move the numbers over into Storyline. So I definitely recommend it if it's not a part of your process to start using it for sure. With my visual mockups all ready to go and feeling confident about the interface that I had created, I was ready to move everything into Storyline. So I moved everything over to Storyline, programmed as much as I could, except for the AI integration. And now this was about the time that Devlin had completed his research on servers and serverless functions. So we're going to start getting into some of the technical pieces. And some of it might feel a little bit confusing, and that's okay. If this is something you're interested in, let us know. We can put out some more technical videos explaining all of these things. And as a starter, you can always go back and check out Devlin's video from last week, the Intro to JavaScript video, and that's going to help some of these things feel a little bit more familiar. So stick with me as we go through the technical pieces. Like I said early on, this was all brand new to me, and if I can do it with the help of AI, so can you. So the first thing I just want to reiterate is I'm going to be referring to ChatGPT, but what I do mean is GPT-4o. So GPT-4o is what's powering most of this project. So a lot of the times when we're talking to clients, the vets, things like that, it's all GPT-4o. That's the model that ChatGPT uses. If you're familiar with ChatGPT, you know how you can change the model at the top. So I'm using GPT-4o. But again, I'm going to be referring to this as just ChatGPT since that's like the more commonly used term. All right, so like I said, once I had completed building everything in Storyline, Devlin had completed his research on servers and serverless functions and recommended that I used Vercel to set up a serverless function that would be the best route to take for this project. And that was really exciting because I now had a path to make this happen. It was also really scary because what is even a serverless function? I was still just learning, like Claude told me I needed to use a server, so I was like trying to do my own research and figure out what is a server, why do I need it? And now Devlin said a serverless function would be the best way to go. But I wasn't too worried because again, I had AI to help me out and Devlin to ask questions too. So I was ready to tackle this challenge, and I'm going to show you exactly how I did that. So early on, I said that I was using ChatGPT to help me out, but Claude is better at coding. You've probably even heard Devlin say that in his videos. So I asked ChatGPT to take what we've been doing so far and really just talk to it about like my idea, what I want to happen, really like walking it through my full vision, and said, okay, so now help me write prompts to ask another LLM to do this. And so that's what I did. So ChatGPT helped me write the prompt to ask Claude how to help me. And so here's what we have. And I knew that Devlin told me I was going to need to use Vercel. So I said I need to set up Vercel. Early on in my research, I knew I had to do something with GitHub. So I said, okay, we're going to have to set up GitHub. And then I knew I'm going to need some JavaScript, and it needs to handle these API calls for ChatGPT and HeyGen. And then I need everything to be all connected. And then like, here's the plan that ChatGPT gave me. Please help. And it's like, okay, yeah, let's do this. And it gave me like this little list of here's what we're going to do. Here's some tips. And then here are all the pieces that we need to work through. And so I was ready to go. And yeah, that's how I started out. I just asked Claude, here's everything that I want to do. Please help. And like I said, with AI, it's nice because you can ask so many follow-up questions and it's going to help you learn to make sure you're truly understanding what's going on. You can see like it was helping me set up the folders and all of those things. So the first thing we did was we set up GitHub, or a repository in GitHub or a GitHub repo. And so this is holding all of the code. It's kind of acting like a cloud, I guess, for the code. Lots of people use GitHub to share their code and have like open source code, things like that. So this is where I have all of my code. I set up my serverless function in Vercel, and you can see there's this button right here, repository. So this is talking to GitHub, and I had like, yeah, the little in my API folder, there's a hello, just a little hello JavaScript. That was to make sure that my serverless function was connected with my GitHub repository. And then once I had those set up, I didn't have the folders in GitHub yet. What I was using was Visual Studio Code. So that screenshot you saw in Claude where I was asking like, are my folders set up correctly? That's because I was asking it about my folders that I was using in Visual Studio Code. So Claude walked me through setting up all of the files I was going to need by just adding in these different files. Making sure that I was set up on GitHub and Vercel. Now, I did use GitHub, but I was actually using the desktop version instead, because that's where I was like logging the changes. And GitHub was such a key part in like doing this project. So early on, I think it was in Claude, maybe it might have been ChatGPT. One of those two AI models told me that GitHub wasn't necessary, but was recommended because I had said I was new. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's set up GitHub. And it was so key in my learning experience, or my learning journey while creating this learning experience, because GitHub keeps track of all of the changes. So like, this is the desktop version of GitHub. And if we look over here, so I'm in my Peck Connect, which I was calling everything because that's the company name. It's in the Peck Connect repository. And this is where you log changes, but you can see the history. So anytime I made changes, everything was logged here. That was crucial because one, if I messed up, I could always go back to a previous version and pull that code and send that back to AI and say like, okay, this is what was working. Let's go back and check that. And two, it made it very clear what was changing in the code. So if we look here, I got this last change, anything in red was being deleted, anything in green was being added in. And so when working with Claude, it would say, we're going to change this function because of this reason. And then it would give me the full code early on. And I asked it to do that because I was like, I don't know how to isolate that piece just yet to change those things. So please give me the full code. And so taking what Claude did, moving it over to update the code and see these changes is really where I started to figure out like what it was changing and learning the why also. And that was helpful. So if this is new to you, I definitely recommend having GitHub be a part of your workflow to set things up, because yes, being able to see these changes, like anytime like this was a brand new piece we were adding in, you can see just like the small changes. Yeah, just from changing like different versions, like that was really, really helpful. Because like I said, Claude would explain, say like, all right, we're going to change this function or these lines of code for this reason. I didn't know exactly where that was, especially when some of the code got longer. It was harder to find those pieces. But once I moved it over to GitHub, I could see the changes, and that made it easier to say like, oh, okay, they changed this line from this to this, and Claude's telling me why. So I started to make more connections, which was really helpful because by the end of this project, I was no longer asking Claude to write out the full code anymore. I was able to isolate the code, lines that I wanted me to change. I felt comfortable even doing small changes by myself without having to consult AI. So I highly recommend using GitHub. It was a really great tool for me. All right, with all these different changes to the code, it was important to always like test what was going on. And so Claude recommended I used this visual. So now I'm in Visual Studio Code, and it recommended this plugin called Thunder Client. And so what I would do is I was setting up some like endpoints. So to make all of these programs talk to each other, I had to use API keys and then set up API endpoints in Vercel. So Vercel, my serverless function, is what's holding all of those endpoints and like doing all the communication and stuff. And I set up 3 different endpoints, one for ChatGPT, one for sending the video request to HeyGen, and then one for checking the status of the video to make sure it's processing and getting sent and all of those things. But in order to make sure that those were working on the serverless function, that like they were functional endpoints, I had to test them. And early on, ChatGPT was telling me about testing them locally and I was like, I don't know how to do that. But Claude, again, coming in clutch and knowing that I was very new, said there's this plugin called Thunder Client that is for free that you can add onto Visual Studio Code. And this is how I was testing my code locally to make sure things were running. So like this one, let's see. Okay, this was sending in the video. And so Claude would help me write the code. It's testing my endpoint, and then I would get some information over here. This one here is checking the video status. And so this like beginning part here comes directly from Vercel. It's coming from it's my domain here. And then let's go back to Visual Studio Code, and then it's testing things. Here, this is the one that's like testing the video. And so what Claude would have me do is it would tell me like, okay, we're going to test the endpoint. Here's the code. You're going to put it in here. You've probably heard Devlin talk about post and get like these calls. So I would send it, and then I would screenshot this and send it to Claude. And then I started learning too of like these, like the statuses and things like that of like what's good and what is like means we have an error and we need to fix things. Yeah, so this is how I was testing my endpoint. So let's go through a little bit more clearly what was my workflow. All right, so Claude helped me set up all of these pieces. I would prompt Claude to write the code and being very explicit, saying like, here's what I need you to do. I'm very new, so please be thorough in your explanations. So I would prompt Claude to write the code. I would go through and update Visual Studio Code. And by updating, what I mean was I would copy and paste everything from Claude, go over to my file, whatever one I was doing. I would paste it in, save it. And then my next step was to confirm the changes in the GitHub repository. So I would open up my desktop version of GitHub. And once I save a change in Visual Studio Code, it'll tell me here what like changes are waiting to be sent. And it gives it its own summary. It'll say like updating chat JavaScript, and then you press commit to main. And then you push your changes to Vercel, which was the next step. So we push the changes to Vercel, and then I would test it in Thunder Client. And then I would share any screenshots with Claude. So that was my workflow each time. I would ask Claude to write the code, put in Visual Studio Code, confirm the changes in GitHub, push it to Vercel, test in Thunder Client, screenshot, repeat the process. And that's how I set up all three endpoints. And it was great because in Thunder Client, like I said, I was able to test locally and seeing like the success, like the status being green instead of red. So that was exciting. And with all of that set up, I was ready to start like actually implementing all of the AI pieces into Storyline. I've talked a lot too about how this is like secure. So let me go back to Vercel too before we get into Storyline too much, and kind of show you what I mean by that. So Vercel is my serverless function, and that is where all of my API keys are being stored in something called environmental variables or environment variables, which is right here. So if I click on this, you'll see it has my HeyGen API key and my Open API key. So this is why it's being secure, meaning if someone on the client side or in the browser tried to look at my code, they wouldn't be able to find my API key because it's being stored here, and it's secure and it's behind the scenes. If you just integrate ChatGPT into Storyline, then someone can't see your API key, which then doesn't make it secure. They can send tons of requests, which like would charge you a bunch. So yeah, using a serverless function is really beneficial for that security reason. If you've made it this far with me so far, great. The next technical pieces aren't too bad, but before we get into there, we're going to look at visuals again. And yeah, if this is still really interesting to you and you're like very interested, check out Devlin's Intro to JavaScript video. It really is going to give you like that basic foundation that you need to do stuff like this. All right, so with the AI or API endpoints set up in Vercel, secure, ready to go, I was ready to work in Storyline. So I just want to take you through some of the slides in Storyline to show you where I'm implementing some other like JavaScript and why I'm doing those things. So I just want you to kind of see some of those background pieces. All right, so here we are in Storyline. The first part where I had some AI integration is when we talk to our client, Linda, and that happens here. So I'm going to get rid of that. And so here we have our chat with Linda, and you'll see my trigger over here to execute the JavaScript. And so it may look a little scary, but again, I used AI to help me with all of this. And honestly, now that I've learned more about the code, this code is really not that complex, and there's really not even a lot of code in here. What makes it look longer is the prompt that's being sent to ChatGPT. That's like the bigger piece, and the actual code is pretty small, so it's not as bad as it looks. But yeah, so here is what I asked Claude to help me with to write these. And I'm going to walk you through my process too of how I got like the prompts and all of those things. But yeah, so this is the code that like powers Linda, our client. And it tells her how she's going to act in this situation. And then it's also going to send a review. So Linda, our client, after we chat with her, she writes a review, kind of like a Google review. And then she also gives us a star rating of 1 to 5 stars. And so all of that is happening in the code that I was showing you. It writes Linda's review from her perspective. And then ChatGPT also takes the chat history and evaluates it to give a 1 through 5 star rating, which is pretty cool. Again, more targeted feedback. So yeah, so this is like some of Linda's. So here's what we have set up, and then here's the JavaScript. For our vet, it's very similar. So our vet chat, I made it look pretty similar to what we saw for Linda. It's just larger, a larger box. And then the same thing, we have our JavaScript here. The vet is powered, again, by GPT-4o, and it's a little bit different because it can see the chat history from the vet tech or the learner and the client. That was important to me because I wanted the support from the vet to be targeted. I wanted it to be helpful. I didn't want it to just like you click on a mentor and it's like, keep being empathetic. Well, that doesn't help because how do I help this lady with her bird? So I wanted the vet to be able to see the chat to give some more like direct suggestions and support. So yeah, that's what we have here. Some of the stuff you see down here is really just making things like nice. Or we have, if you've watched Devlin's video, here's like the catch where we're like doing some checks for errors and logging those in the console to make sure we know what's happening. And then we also have what's powering like our other pieces. So here we have some JavaScript, and this one is for the feedback video. So I have JavaScript here to look at the client chat, like the chat history, the rating, and the review from the client. And then I have Morgan's like persona, how she's going to act. It's going to look at all of that other data and then come up with the feedback that then becomes the script in that feedback video. Okay, I don't have my first original prompt, but yeah, so like I said, I would ask ChatGPT, like, here's what I'm trying to do. I need a prompt for Linda. Here's a little background, write a persona. And then here, what you're seeing here is like when I did this for the vet tech. Actually, I think I might have used Claude for this one too. Let me pull up Claude. Okay, I did use Claude. This is another tip, an unofficial but official tip. When you are working with AI, you may notice that it will create its own title for your chat. I highly recommend renaming those. I did not do a good job of that while working on this project, especially because I was starting so many chats over and over. I didn't do a good job of naming them. And so going back to find things it's a challenge because I'm having to click through and like scroll and scroll. So highly recommend renaming your chats to a descriptive title that you will know what it means when you go back to. So let me show you really quick what I did. This is a little bit different than what I said. I did it differently for the veterinarian though, but the others I used ChatGPT. So here I am asking Claude, help me write this persona for a veterinarian, 10 years of experience, and she works with like all animals. I didn't want it to just be specific to the bird because I want this mentor character to be able to work with any client if I build this project out further. And so it says, here we go. And it gives us all of these details about our veterinarian. Like, okay, perfect. So I copied this and I took it over to ChatGPT and said, okay, now I need you to help me write a prompt for our vet mentor character for an e-learning project. I'm going to be adding this to JavaScript so that the users can talk to the vet to help the client with the conversation. And then I gave us some more background and said like, okay, so here are some key pieces from the persona. I didn't take everything from Claude, just the parts that were going to be necessary. So I said like, all right, here's everything about our vet. And I gave them the new name that I wanted to use. And then it wrote the prompt for me. I did tell it like what variables and stuff. So that's where you're going to see like username and chat history. And so it gave me the prompt here that powers our vet. So like all of this here. Let's see, I'll go back to Storyline and show you. So yeah, so here you'll see you are Dr. Tessa Clark, a senior vet with 10 years of experience specializing in general vet medicine. And then, yeah, you are Tessa Clark, general vet medicine. So yeah, I had to write the prompt here and then added that into my code. I did have Claude help me out with that. So I said, here is the prompt I want. And it's like, okay, I will update your code to include this prompt. I did this sometimes because if I wasn't sure exactly like where I was going to find the right like braces and stuff, I did want it to still help me out. But for the most part, I am confident in updating these prompts on my own now and going through with and not worrying about breaking my code. Okay, I've talked a lot about using Claude, and I do have another tip to share when working with Claude. So with Claude, I learned early on, and also like a tip from Devlin, is I was having like one really long conversation with Claude because in my mind I thought, well, if I can keep it in one conversation and I refer to something earlier on, then it's going to know because it's all in one conversation. So that's how I originally approached working with Claude. But I found out, like I said, very quickly, and then from Devlin also, I kept reaching a limit. So I would talk with Claude, and then it would say my chat is getting too long, and then I would just keep going because I'm like, well, I need it in this chat so that it can refer to other stuff. And then I would be locked out for like hours. Say like, you're out of like send requests or whatever it says for this many hours, and like I couldn't get on again until like 3 a.m, which that's not what I wanted to work on coding. So my tip for you is don't let the chats get too long and ask Claude to summarize your progress, then start a new chat to keep from reaching that limit. So what's nice is, like I said, Claude would tell me that I'm reaching the limit. Let's see, maybe in this one, it'll show me. Maybe not. But anyway, it'll give you like this little note down here that says like your chat is getting too long, and then it'll give you a prompt to start a new chat. And at first I was ignoring that because, like I said, I thought it would be best if I kept everything in one chat so that it would know what I was referring to later on. So instead, what I was doing after to keep from reaching those limits, because that does like really slow your progress, because it's not just like in an hour, it was like 3 hours or 4 hours sometimes that I had to wait, and at inconvenient times like 3 a.m. and things like that. So that can really like slow down your time. But what I learned was to look for that note. It comes up like in a little, I think it was blue, a little blue banner that says like your chat is getting long, and then start a new chat. So once I got that message, I would say like, okay, I need you to summarize our progress, and you're going to write it in this format. So I told it how I wanted to write it. So say what we're trying to do, what's working right now, and then what we're trying to fix or what still needs to be fixed. So I use that each time, and I'll show you an example here. So I told it like, here's what I'm trying to do real quick. It's working on this e-learning project. This is what I need help with. This is what's working. And this specifically is what needs to be fixed. And so by doing this, I was able to like keep my progress up. Oh, perfect. Here's one down here. Tip: long chats cause you to reach your usage limit faster. Start a new chat. So once you see that message, I recommend saying like, all right, summarize our work and tell me what's working, what I need to work with. Like give it that format that I just mentioned, like, and what you see here, and then start a new chat. Copy it, start a new chat. And so you can kind of see, eventually I got into that habit and started doing that, starting new chats each time with the summary that I had used before. Again, a key tip, rename those chats to something more descriptive so that when you go back, it's easy to know which chat you need to go back to and look at. But yeah, that is one of my like key tips for sure with working with Claude, is don't let your chat get too long because you're going to reach limits and that's going to slow your progress. But this part here, asking it to summarize and then giving it that structure, what we're trying to do, what's working and what still needs to be fixed. And being able to do that did help my process so much more. Like, it made it a lot smoother. And the part, like when I said I wanted to stay in the same chat because I would reference things earlier, that it really was not even an issue once I was doing this, because Claude was doing a good job of summarizing everything, that I can take that and move it over to the next chat, and that chat knew exactly what I was talking about. So yeah, there's no fear of like, oh no, it's all in this chat and it's not going to know what I'm talking about. It can help you summarize to move all of those things over. Okay, before we go a little bit further, let's talk a little bit about the whole flow of this project and like the AI integration stuff. So like I just said, we had Claude helping to write like the prompts to give all of these characters personas, and then, use ChatGPT to write the personas and like the prompts to help Claude in the JavaScript, all of that good stuff. So the flow of this, we talk with the client. So we have a client chat. Then once we end the chat with the client, then there's another bit of JavaScript that gets executed that writes the review from the client's perspective and gives us a 1 through 5 star rating. Then, just a little bit after that, we have another bit of JavaScript code that gets executed. That writes the script for Morgan, who is our lead vet tech, using the client's chat history, the star rating, and the review to give that targeted feedback. That script that gets written for Morgan gets sent to HeyGen. HeyGen generates a video. My video status API endpoint continues to check the status of that video. Once the video is processed, it gets sent back to Storyline, and then it gets injected into a web object. So let me show you real quick in Storyline what that looks like. So really quick, here's our chat with Linda. Once we press the end chat, that's when that's happening, and I showed you that code a little bit ago. When we're here, this is when we are writing the script for Morgan, and then we have to have time to process that video, so there's some activities in between. Then we land on this, and here we have our web object. Right now I have my portfolio URL in here just so that I could add the web object to the slide, and then I have code here that is injecting the video. So it looks for the iframe, it takes the URL that gets sent for the video from HeyGen, and then adds it into our player. And Claude helped me make this like a little bit more of a custom player, so that was a nice piece also. And then I do have it logging some stuff in the console to say like, hey, this is the error, this is what happened. One thing that happened with the iframe was I was getting the URL. That was like the big success because that was the piece that I was missing. And I could see it because while I was testing this, I would have my variables visible on Storyline. That way I can like always check stuff, and then looking in the console on the side to make sure my errors are being like logged correctly and I could figure out what's going on. But I could see the URL. I knew the video was ready. But when I would get to this slide, the video would not be in the web object. I would see my portfolio website, which is like my default website in the web object. And so I was working with Claude, and it kept trying to fix the code, and nothing was happening. And I realized that it was like my error. Every time the JavaScript would trigger to look for the iframe, well, I had my iframe like delayed a little bit on the timeline and Storyline, so the JavaScript was triggering, but there was no iframe available. And that's what it was telling me in the log, in my console logs, that it couldn't find the iframe, like no iframe was detected. And I was like, but it is, I know it's there, I put it there. And it's because of that timing. So timing was another big thing with all of this. Morgan's feedback early on, the lead vet tech, her video feedback was really harsh, where she would say like, you weren't empathetic, you didn't help the client, even if you got a 5-star rating. And that was because of timing. So I had to adjust the timing there also, because Morgan's script, that JavaScript code, was triggering before the review rating from ChatGPT was coming in. So it was triggering before, and so it looked like there was no rating and it was 0 stars. And so I was getting really harsh feedback. So I had to adjust the timing there. And the same thing here. I fixed the web object by moving it to the beginning of the timeline when the JavaScript code was going to trigger. It found it, and everything was functioning perfectly. with everything working and functional, ready to go, I was ready for some user testing. And user testing is such a crucial step in the process because that's going to give you so much more insight of what your users are expecting or missing when they're looking at your learning experience, making sure the content flows, and then even just sharing it with colleagues to get some more feedback. So that's my next tip. User testing. Test with people in your life and test often. Saving a big test until the end can make things a little bit overwhelming when you're doing changes. So I did do lots of testing. Like I said, I'd been communicating pretty often with Devlin throughout the process. After my very first iteration of the project, I created a demo video. So I just recorded myself going through the project and I shared it in our community, in our Devlin Peck community. I shared it with the Devlin Peck team. So I shared it with my colleagues to get some feedback. And some of that feedback actually helped shape a lot of what the new version looked like. So yeah, test often. And you can test with the colleagues, your network, friends, and family. Family and friends who are not instructional designers make great testers because they're really going to help make sure your user interface is intuitive. Right, when you test with instructional designers and e-learning developers, they may overlook some things because they know what you're going for. But your family and friends may get to a slide and say like, oh, I don't know what to do next. What do I click? And so that is very, very valuable feedback. So definitely test with a lot of the people in your life. They're going to give you some good feedback. So places where I tested, like I said, I tested I created the demo video, shared that in the community for some initial feedback. When I shared that video with the Devlin Peck team, I got really good feedback about my user interface, that it was clear, like I was clicking on certain things because I built it. But they had missed like a notification that came in. So like when the bell, like the little dot comes on and the little ding sound plays, they had missed it. And so they said they wouldn't have clicked on it because they didn't know what they were supposed to click next. And so that was very helpful information. And I had to make some edits to that. So I'll show you how I actually addressed that bit of feedback. So in the learning experience, I had showed you kind of what the platform looks like, and we have these different pieces. And this had changed too, so it didn't look the same. But I wanted to make sure that it was clear, like when we got a notification, they knew because this is how I was directing them through other pieces. So what I did was I actually created kind of like a mini software simulation from Morgan, our lead vet tech, showing us around the platform. So let me show you that video. That's in our Meet Morgan piece.
Hey, I'm Morgan Hart, lead vet tech here at Pet Connect Care. It's your first chat, but you'll get messages from colleagues like me. Here's the bell notification. This is where you'll get general alerts. For the message and bell note, pet's medical history. You may not be prepared for every situation, so you can check in with a veterinarian. They'll be able to see your chat with the client and give you advice.
Yeah, so adding in just that little simulation where Morgan takes us through everything was really helpful because, yeah, it introduced everybody to the platform early on so they knew how to navigate and pointed out some key pieces like asking the vet for help later on. Even down to explaining the end chat button, like when that will be enabled and things like that. So that was really powerful, helpful feedback that definitely increased the usability of this project. When I tested with boot campers within our boot camp, I did some live testing because I also thought that was going to be important, and it was. So I invited some people to get on a Zoom call. I shared the link to the project and had them test it live. And after we discussed, and they gave me some feedback. I wanted to test live because I wanted to see how HeyGen would handle multiple video requests at once. And I wanted to be able to get real-time feedback. Some feedback I got in that session was an activity that I included to buy some time for the video processing. So after you end your chat with Linda, you meet with a client, Alex, and then after that, you see your review. And I still needed some time, so I added in this well, I'll show you here. So we get our notification from Alex, and he says hey, do you think you can do this challenge? And then we try to take the challenge. So I added in this little mobile game that tests vets' skills on what they should do in certain situations. And this was to give the learners another task to test their skills while video processing can still handle, be going on in the background, just to make sure that the video was ready by the time they got to that slide where the video should be. And so when I just tested with users, they weren't too sure of the purpose of this like little mobile app in the middle. It wasn't clear. So a change I'm going to make is the way Alex introduces it. Instead of just saying like, hey, I played this game, can you beat my score? He's going to give us a little more background of like, yeah, Pet Connect Care gives us these different ways to practice our skills. Here's what I got. And then invites us to practice it too. So I'm going to change up that language so that it's a little bit more clear. We have these AI portfolio project workshops in the bootcamp that are hosted by Devlin. And so anytime any of us are working on an AI project, we can bring it there for feedback from our peers and Devlin and get some coding support from Devlin too. So if that is something you're interested in, joining us in these workshops and getting support from Devlin, we're having our next bootcamp launch coming up, and applications are going to be opening up after our next live event coming up this Thursday. So you can learn more by going to devlinpeck.com/bootcamp and signing up there and joining the waitlist and all of those good things to come join us and work on some AI projects with us. With feedback implemented, I'm feeling really good about this project. I like the flow of the like content and story as we work through our day as a vet tech, and I like the user interface. I feel like it has become more intuitive thanks to the feedback I received. But of course, with any project, there is always room for improvement. So let's talk about the changes and additions that I'd like to make to this project. The first one is adding XAPI to track interactions. I'm noticing that every time someone tests it, and I can see in HeyGen like their video come up and process, and then I can see the feedback that they're getting and watch the video. But every time I'm seeing that, I'm realizing that I'm getting more curious of like, well, what was their interaction like with the client that caused this feedback? And so I think it'd be really helpful to track those interactions by adding XAPI. Not just because of my curiosity, but adding XAPI to track the client chat history would allow me to see how users are interacting with the client, to see if there's any like common mistakes happening that I can address in a different way in this learning experience. And it would also help me see that my prompts, how my prompt like for how Linda responds or how Morgan like gives feedback, how those are working, and make adjustments to make them much more targeted and helpful. So XAPI would be a great addition to this project. Another addition, something that I'm working on, is pressing enter to submit the chat response. So right now there's like the little send button that you type and then you click to send your response. But I even noticed for myself when I was typing, I would just like hit enter to send it, like I'm working on like ChatGPT or something. And so this was something Devlin suggested too, was like, have you thought about that? And I was like, yes, because I press enter sometimes when I'm trying to type instead of pressing the send button. So at Thursday's live event, Devlin's going to go over some different integrations of like different JavaScript things you can do in Storyline. And this is definitely one that he's going to do with like, yeah, focus, like the focus in the like text area and like keys and things like that. So join us in the live event if you're looking for some ways to upgrade your Storyline experiences by using some different JavaScript code. So the link for that to sign up will be in the description. So yeah, join us there. We'll see you there. Come learn some more JavaScript stuff with us. And then a fix is I need to fix the fallback video logic. So in the experience, we have Morgan's video here. That comes in here. It didn't right now because I don't have it generated, but I do have some different videos from Morgan. So in case the video in HeyGen doesn't generate, this goes off of the star rating. So if you earn 4 or 5 stars, you get the high rating. If you earn 3 stars, you get a medium rating. And if you get 1 to 2 stars, then you get the low rating feedback from Morgan. Right now, what's happening is it's not always sending you to those feedback videos when the video doesn't process, or if it doesn't process fast enough. And so I need to go back into my code and see what's happening there. So that's a fix that I definitely need to make. And I'm excited to work through it because I've really enjoyed the problem solving of all of this. And then another change that was recommended to me by Devlin was, right now, the feedback videos are pretty short because the processing time is long in HeyGen. And if I wanted to send a longer video with like more in-depth feedback, the best way to do that would be to send it by email. And so that would take some coding and figuring out there and like the triggers and storyline to send it by email. But it would also, not just that part would have to change, but I also have to figure out like in this story of how this whole thing is flowing, how it makes sense for it to do that as well. And then the next thing that I would love to add and / change that is going to be a big challenge is to create custom chatbots. So right now, when you are talking with Linda or the vet, you don't get to see your chat history. You just see like the new message and then you send yours, you see the new message. I am collecting the chat history in a variable, which is why like the vet can see the chat history or Morgan's script is written off the chat history. I am collecting that, but visually it doesn't look great. And I would have to really rely on Storyline's scroll bar, and I know sometimes that can be a little glitchy, and I would be afraid if I don't make the scroll box big enough, my text will get tiny. So there's a lot to consider with trying to do it here in Storyline, but I can fix that if I create a custom chatbot. So that's the next thing. That's going to be a bigger technical undertaking because not only would I be using JavaScript, I'd have to learn a little bit of CSS and HTML to make it look nice, because that's the whole point, is that it looks nicer than what I would be able to do currently in Storyline. So that's the next step that I would like to do and add it in here. Something I'm really excited about trying to do. I think that would be a really fun challenge because I really have been loving like all of this coding stuff. I know Devlin's talked about in his videos how it does get addicting, and it definitely does. I have enjoyed seeing when my code works and then also just being very determined when it doesn't, that like, okay, I need to fix this. I'm going to fix this. I can fix this. And I hope you are starting to feel the same as you see more of these like technical videos. All right, let's get into the key takeaways of this whole project. So my key takeaways, I want to talk about my workflow, some things to consider with HeyGen, working with Devlin, the things that I learned there, and just my overall learning journey. So let's talk about my AI workflow first. Prompting was key. So I know I showed it a little bit, but like really being able to like say, here's what I need, and being very descriptive, and even helping or having AI help you write a prompt to start another chat was really crucial. So really working on those prompting skills is important in this case. Prompting, of course, doesn't have to be perfect because you can have AI. So like I would tell ChatGPT, this is what I'm doing. Help me write the prompt to do this, and then copy that and start a new chat so that it'd be more specific. So prompting was really key in my AI workflow. Knowing when to start a new chat. Like I said, Claude would lock me out after my chat got too long and I'd have to wait hours. So making sure to look for when it said like long chats can like make you reach your limit faster, start a new chat. So knowing to look for that sign, say, hey, summarize this, and then take that new prompt and start a new chat was also very important in continuing like my progress without like hitting these roadblocks. Oh, I didn't talk about this at the beginning, but using the available API documentation was key. So there were some times with Claude where I was trying to figure out something for HeyGen, and we would just be going in circles updating the code. And because I was newer to code, I didn't always know like what exactly it was trying to change or what it was checking for. But I knew that HeyGen had its API documentation. And so I would go over to that. And again, that was still kind of foreign to me. And I was like, I don't know what's the difference between like post and get, but I know they're different. And so using some of my problem solving skills and just like my ability to recognize patterns and go from there, that helped me out a ton. So I would go over to the API documentation in HeyGen, kind of look at what it was saying about like video generating and say like, okay, it's saying that I need to use a post function here, and then to get the video back, I need to use a get function or like get request and those things like that. It's like, okay, let me go back over to Claude and I'm going to tell it what I just read. And that helped me out a lot. So I think really any platform that has API out, they have API documentation that helps you know how to use their API. So that was definitely helpful and kept me from going in circles with Claude. Now, for the HeyGen considerations, I mentioned a little bit that it takes a while for the videos to process, and unfortunately, that time can vary. So I did lots of testing with HeyGen, and I noticed that like the short videos that I'm submitting are 10 to 12 seconds, and that is very specific because I do tell the prompt in my JavaScript code to write a 10 to 12 second script. So I needed it to be short, and a 10 to 12 second video typically takes about 3.5 to 4.5 minutes to process. And then it's not a linear growth after that. It's pretty exponential. So the longer the video, the longer it takes. I did see on HeyGen's website that if you have like their enterprise option, you can have faster processing times. And it's not just the processing time either that's different. It's also like how your video falls in the queue. So enterprise videos are prioritized, and then like their next paid subscription, it's those ones, and then the free tier, which is what I was using, are the last like priority in the queue. So it can take a long time. I said I wanted to see in user testing when I tested live how that handled. The videos did get delayed. I noticed with HeyGen, as I was watching the HeyGen dashboard, it gets stuck at 57%, and then it will process. Early on in testing, it was doing the same thing, stuck at 57%. In that case, though, it took like 3 or 4 hours until my videos processed, which is not ideal. So some things you want to consider. If you are doing a shorter video or you have other things, you want to find solutions for that long processing time. So I included like the video where you get on a call with a colleague. There's that little mobile app game. And then Devlin recommended either sending the video by email later on, or I'd have to like extend like the project or something. So there's some things to consider for sure. AI is always improving, and so that could be something that gets fixed later on. Yeah, something to consider if you're going to incorporate HeyGen is the processing time. Next was working with Devlin. It was a lot of fun, honestly. So it was really, really helpful too to talk through like these really complex technical concepts. Even though like I had AI to help me out, there were still some things where I'm like, I don't really know what this is talking about, but being able to like talk that through with someone else was really, really crucial. And so, that's like my next tip is collaboration. So having someone to discuss those technical challenges with, a mentor, a peer, your community, that can make all the difference. One, it's nice to have someone to talk to and like have like a springboard for ideas. It's also helpful to just have someone else look at what you're working on, because it's easy to overlook things after you've been looking at them for so long. So yeah, working with Devlin was like super, super helpful. Like more specifically, like I said in my like video status code, when we got on that call and he like shared the piece that I was missing, like that's where like my barrier was, and I was able to get past that with his help. Even just knowing to use serverless functions, so like all of that collaboration like with Devlin was like super, super helpful. And then just even his feedback in general of the project UI and experience and things like that. So highly recommend finding people to collaborate with, testers, getting feedback, talking through technical ideas, as AI can be helpful, but it is always nice to talk with somebody instead. And then if you are interested in bringing any AI-powered solutions to your organization or learning more about this, and you'd like to work with Devlin and myself, then you can reach out through the link below. There will be a form that you can fill out to let us know what you're looking for and how we can help you. So we're very excited to help out with all of these like AI solutions that we've been working on. So if that's something you're looking for, definitely let us know. All right, and last but not least, my learning journey. So although I worked a lot with AI and a lot with Devlin, I was very, very proud of this project because I was able to do a lot. Like I built this project from the ground up, from going from like no background in code to creating this pretty technically complex project. It was really exciting. So I'm very, very proud of it, and I hope that's coming through in this video. Like I'm very proud of this project, quite a bit, and I'm very thankful too for all the like user testing that I was able to do. Like everyone that helped me out in this whole process, that was really great. So that was really a big piece to help build this project, and I was really eager to put my technical skills to the test as well as my problem solving skills. This was a big undertaking, but I never felt super intimidated by the process because I knew I had AI. I knew I had a community to help. and things like that. So yeah, being able to like lean on your people is definitely helpful for sure. And yeah, it was really, really cool to see what I was able to do. And then like the last one of my learning journey is my confidence with code. Like I am so much more confident with what I'm able to do. Early on, I said I was having Claude rewrite the entire code for me because I didn't know how to isolate something. By the end, I was able to like manipulate things on my own without breaking the code, which is really exciting. And I'm able to like update my prompts and do all these different things. And actually like setting up the vet was like an after piece because that's feedback I had gotten from Devlin of like, yeah, add this mentor character who can provide on-demand support. Writing that was so easy because it was taking pretty much what I did with the client code and then just adjusting it a little bit and taking pieces from like writing Morgan's script and putting those together so that the vet could see the chat. So it wasn't like anything new and it didn't feel scary. I was able to put all of that together, which was really, really cool. All right, that's everything. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. If my project has inspired you to take on this technical challenge of integrating JavaScript and maybe even AI into Storyline, but specifically JavaScript into Storyline, then join us this Thursday for our live event where Devlin is going to take us through various JavaScript integrations into Storyline. And if you're wanting to jump into that, definitely check out Devlin's Intro to JavaScript video so that you are more familiar with the terms and ready to get started. That live event is going to be a hands-on session and it's going to be really great. So I hope you join us. Register with the link below. I hope to see you there. Bye.